The little alien girl left at his door. Rain fell hard that night. The wind howled outside his small cabin at the edge of the woods. The human man, quiet, middle-aged, and alone, sat in his chair with a warm cup of tea. The world outside was cold, wet, and dangerous, but inside his cabin it was peaceful, until a soft knock came at the door. He looked up. It was late, too late for visitors. He waited, thinking maybe the storm had made a branch tap the wall, but the knock came again. Cautiously, he stood, walked to the door, and opened it. There, standing in the rain, was a tiny alien girl. She couldn't have been older than 5. Her skin was a pale lavender, her large eyes glowing faintly blue. She wore a dirty cloth wrapped around her like a dress, and her small hands were shaking. Her feet were bare. Mud covered her legs. She looked up at him, scared, but silent. The man didn't speak at first. He had never seen an alien child this close and alone, in the storm. What was she doing here? He knelt down slowly. "You okay?" he asked gently. She didn't answer. Her lips were purple from the cold. "Where's your family?" he asked again. The girl didn't speak, but after a pause, she pointed one trembling finger to her chest and whispered, "Mama." Then she fainted. The man caught her before she hit the ground. Her body was freezing. He didn't think. He carried her inside. He laid her on the couch and rushed to get dry towels. She was so light, too light, starving maybe. He wrapped her in the towels and placed a blanket over her. Then he lit the fire stronger. Next, he prepared a warm bowl of broth, simple soup, no spices. She was unconscious, but he gently placed a spoonful to her lips. Some of it touched her tongue and her body twitched. "Come on," he whispered. "Stay with me." After a few more tries, she opened her eyes slowly. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. "You're safe now," he said softly. The girl stared at him, confused, scared, but no longer shivering as much. He gave her a small smile. "I'm Jack," he said. "You hungry?" She nodded, very slowly. Jack held the spoon again and fed her little by little. She didn't ask questions, didn't speak much, just ate quietly, like she hadn't eaten in days. After a while, she fell asleep on the couch, holding the blanket tightly with both hands. That night, Jack sat beside her. He didn't sleep. Questions filled his mind. Who left her at his door? Why? Was she alone? Where was her mother? He looked out the window. Rain still poured outside. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The world beyond his cabin felt colder than ever. At midnight, he heard something strange. A soft cry. He turned toward the girl, but she was still asleep. The sound came from outside. He grabbed his coat and stepped onto the porch. The wind hit him hard. He looked around. Nothing. But then, he saw something. Far at the edge of the trees, a shadow stood. It moved like a person, but it was hard to tell. Too dark. "Hello?" he called. The shadow turned and vanished into the forest. Jack stood still for a moment, heart pounding. Then he went back inside and locked the door. Something or someone was watching. The next morning, the little alien girl woke up. She sat up slowly, looking around the cabin. When she saw Jack, she didn't run. She just stared. "Morning," he said kindly. She looked down, then whispered one word. "Thank you." Jack smiled. "You can stay here for now, until we figure things out." The girl nodded. Her eyes were still full of sadness, but a small warmth had returned to her face. Jack had no idea how much his life was about to change. And somewhere deep, in the woods, a pair of glowing blue eyes watched them from behind the trees, waiting. The mother who watches. From the shadows deep within the dark forest, she watched. Hidden behind thick branches and wet leaves, the alien mother stood still. Her body trembled from the cold, but her eyes stayed fixed on the little wooden cabin. She had followed her child here the night before, watched her knock, then collapse in the arms of the human man. Her chest ached with pain, but also relief. He had taken her child in, given her warmth, food, safety. The mother had nothing to offer. Her clothes were torn. Her arms were thin. Her once beautiful skin was covered in dirt and cuts. She hadn't eaten in days. She hadn't slept in longer. But she hadn't come to beg for herself. She came only to make sure her daughter survived. Days ago, she had made a choice no mother ever wanted to make. She had wrapped her little girl in the last dry cloth she had, whispered goodbye in her ear, and walked her close to the human roads. "Someone kind will find you," she had whispered through tears. Then she had hidden and watched from a distance, praying. Now, seeing her daughter sleeping peacefully behind a glowing window, the mother's legs finally gave out. She sat down in the mud, her body too weak to keep standing. Tears ran down her cheeks. She hadn't cried in so long. She had been a warrior once, strong and proud. But that was before the war, before she lost her mate, before her people turned on her and called her a curse. She had nothing left, only her daughter. And now, even that, she had given up. Suddenly, she heard movement. The cabin door opened. She quickly pulled herself behind a tree. The human man, Jack, stepped outside. He looked around. His eyes scanned the trees. Did he hear her? She stayed still, not even breathing. Jack stood for a few seconds in the rain, then placed something on the porch. A small basket, blanket, and bread inside. Then he looked up toward the woods again, as if he knew someone was out there. He said nothing, just turned and went back inside. The door closed. The mother blinked. He knew. That night, when the world was silent, she crawled to the cabin porch. Her legs barely moved. Her arms were shaking. She didn't knock. She only reached the basket, grabbed a piece of bread with both hands, and sat down. She took one bite and wept. Not from hunger, but because it was the first time in weeks someone had shared food with her. Inside the cabin, Jack sat on the floor beside the girl. She was curled up in a warm blanket, breathing softly. He had seen the figure again, faint, in the shadows. Not a threat, not a thief, a mother. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but he knew one thing. She was not a monster. She was hurting, and somehow he could feel her pain from behind the trees. The next morning, Jack opened the door and found the basket empty. The bread was gone. The blanket was folded carefully. He looked around. No sign of her, but he smiled. She had accepted his gift. That meant she was still nearby, still watching, still trying to protect her child. He stepped down, picked up the blanket, and whispered to the air, "You don't have to hide." The trees didn't answer. But deep in the woods, the mother listened. Her hands clutched her chest, and her lips moved in silence. "Thank you. Human." Back inside, the little girl sat at the table eating porridge. She looked up at Jack with sleepy eyes. "Mama," she whispered. Jack knelt beside her. "She's out there," he said softly. "She hasn't left you." The girl didn't smile, but a tear rolled down her cheek. She nodded once. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll bring her back," he said. "I promise." That night, the fire crackled warmly in the cabin. Outside, the forest was cold and wet again, but this time 2 bowls of food sat on the porch, one for a child inside, and one for a mother in the shadows. Why she left her daughter behind before the forest, before the hunger. She had been someone else. The alien mother once stood tall in the royal guard of her people. Strong, respected. Her voice was sharp. Her armor shone with honor. She had a mate a home, and dreams of a peaceful life. But that was before the war. When the invaders came from the sky, everything burned. Her people were forced to flee underground or fight like animals in the mud. Her mate, brave, loyal, died shielding her and their child. His last breath had whispered one word. Run. She did. With nothing but her daughter in her arms, she escaped into the wilds. She ran for days, hiding from patrols, scavenging scraps. Her child cried from hunger, her tiny stomach too empty to keep going. But no one would help her. Not her own people. Not the outposts. Not the travelers on the road. She had become a fugitive. The leaders called her a deserter, a coward. She had been hunted like a traitor for choosing her child over their war. One cold evening, she stumbled upon a broken ship near the old human borders. She remembered stories. Humans are strange. Some are kind. Some are not. But she had no more options. She wrapped her child tightly in her arms and made the hardest decision of her life. She would not let her daughter die with her. That night, she watched from behind thick brush as the human's cabin glowed, softly under the moonlight. Her little girl stood trembling at the door. She knocked. Once. Twice. The mother's hands covered her mouth to hold in the sobs. When the door opened and the man reached out, when he carried her daughter in like she was precious, her knees hit the ground. Her child was safe, but her own heart shattered in silence. She turned and crawled back into the woods where darkness wrapped around her like a cold blanket. Now, days later, she sat beneath a tree, her back pressed against the bark. She was weak, too weak to stand, but her eyes were alive with memory. She clutched something in her hands, a tiny carved wooden charm. It had belonged to her mate. She'd tied it to her daughter's wrist when she left her at the cabin door. A piece of him, a piece of home. She prayed the human had seen it, that he understood. Suddenly, footsteps. Her head snapped up. Slow, careful steps coming closer. She tried to move, but her legs didn't obey. The human man appeared through the trees. Jack. He wasn't carrying a weapon, just a thermos and a blanket. He stopped a few feet from her. Their eyes met. For the first time, they truly saw each other. She looked small and broken, nothing like the proud soldier she had once been. Mud covered her body, her face was thin, but her eyes still burned with fierce love. Jack knelt down slowly and set the blanket beside her. "You don't have to hide anymore," he said gently. She didn't speak, but her lip trembled. He opened the thermos and poured hot broth into a cup. The smell made her dizzy with hunger. He held it out, she stared at it, then at him. Her fingers shook as she reached out. Not just for the cup, but for hope. She drank and cried. Jack sat beside her without saying another word. Just quiet. Stillness. The kind of silence that makes someone feel safe. After a long while, she whispered something in her own alien tongue. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. "Thank you." Back at the cabin, the little girl looked out the window. She felt it. She pressed her hand to the glass. Somewhere out there, Mama was coming back. The man goes looking for her. Jack couldn't sleep. Even with the fire warm and the little alien girl curled up safely in her blanket, his heart felt unsettled. He had seen the mother in the woods earlier that day, frail, shivering, eyes filled with silent pain. She didn't run. She didn't threaten. She just looked at him, like she wanted to speak but no longer had the strength, and then she vanished again. He couldn't stop thinking about it. She had left her daughter at his door, but she hadn't truly left. She had stayed close, watching, protecting, suffering. The next morning, Jack packed a small bag, some food, clean water, a first aid kit, and an extra blanket. He left the girl with a note scribbled in simple letters. "I'll be back. Stay inside. You're safe." She was still sleeping when he slipped out the door. The forest was quiet but not peaceful. The air was cold and heavy with fog. Branches cracked under his boots. Every now and then, he paused, listening. He didn't know where to start. He only knew she was out there. And she was alone. Hours passed. Jack followed broken branches, faint footprints, and gut instinct. He checked under fallen trees and inside old caves. Then, he spotted it. A piece of cloth caught on a branch. Not human fabric. Soft, thin, and deep gray blue. The same color the girl had worn. He crouched down and found tiny marks in the dirt. A trail. Faint, but fresh. He followed. After a steep climb, he reached a clearing. At the center, a half-buried cargo pod lay crushed in the earth, its metal burned and torn. Alien markings lined the side, but they were scratched and faded. Jack stepped closer. His hand brushed the surface. Suddenly a whisper, a weak voice behind him. "Stop." He turned quickly. She stood just a few feet away, barefoot, shaking, her thin hands raised weakly. Jack didn't move. The alien mother looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Her body swayed like she might fall at any second, but her eyes still held that same fire. "I'm not here to hurt you," Jack said gently, "or take your daughter away." Her lips parted, but no words came. She winced and grabbed her side. "A wound. Deep." Jack stepped forward. She flinched. "I just want to help," he whispered. He knelt, opened his bag, and held out the water. She stared at it like it was a dream. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and took the bottle. Her fingers brushed his. Her hands were ice. As she drank, Jack took out a small cloth and the antiseptic from his kit. She didn't stop him when he gently touched her wound. Her body tensed but then relaxed. Her eyes stayed on him the whole time, like she couldn't believe a human would do this. Minutes passed in silence. Finally, her voice came, quiet, like wind through dying leaves. "You care for her?" Jack nodded. "I do." She looked away, eyes watering. "I thought I would die alone." "You're not alone," Jack said. She blinked. "My home's warm," he added. "Your daughter misses you." The mother looked to the sky, fighting back. "Tears," she smiled, she whispered. "I saw it. In your arms," she smiled. Jack's voice was soft. "She'll smile even brighter if you come home." At first, the mother said nothing. Then her legs gave out. Jack caught her before she fell. For a moment, she leaned on him, her head resting weakly against his chest. "I'm tired," she whispered. "So tired." Jack held her close, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. "Then rest," he said. "I'll carry you." And he did. Through the cold forest, he carried her like she was weightless. Step by step, back toward the cabin, toward warmth, toward her daughter. The alien mother didn't speak. She just closed her eyes. But before sleep took her, she whispered into his coat, "Take me too, human." She wakes up in a human's home. She didn't know where she was. For a long time, everything was just warmth and silence. No wind biting her skin. No sharp rocks under her back. No hunger tearing at her stomach. Only soft fabric, the smell of firewood, and the faint sound of breathing nearby. Then her eyes opened. The alien mother blinked slowly, adjusting to the dim light. She was lying on something soft, clean sheets, a real bed. Her hands were tucked beneath a heavy blanket, and her body didn't ache as much as before. She turned her head. There, across the room, was her daughter, sleeping peacefully in a small blanket nest near the fireplace. A soft toy beside her. Her little hand curled like she was holding a dream. The mother stared at her for a long time. She was safe. She was warm. She was smiling in her sleep. Tears gathered in the mother's eyes. The door creaked. She turned her head sharply, but it was, only him, the human. He walked in slowly, carrying a small tray, tea and some warm bread. When he saw her awake, he stopped. "You're up," he said softly. "That's good." She didn't answer, just watched him, still trying to understand this place. This man. He placed the tray on a stool near the bed and backed away slightly, giving her space. "No one's going to hurt you here," he said. "You're safe." Her voice came out raspy. "Why? Are you helping me?" He sat on the edge of a chair. "Because your daughter needed someone." She looked down. "And now," he added, "so do you." She wanted to argue, to say she didn't deserve help, that she had failed her people, that she had abandoned her child. But no words came. Only silence. Later, when she sat up and ate a piece of bread, her hands shook. Not from weakness, but from disbelief. She hadn't eaten warm food in weeks, maybe months. Each bite brought tears to her eyes. Jack didn't stare. He just sat quietly and let her take her time. The fire crackled between them. That evening, the little girl awoke. When she saw her mother sitting up in the bed, she gasped and then ran forward, wrapping her tiny arms around her. "Mama!" she cried. The mother held her tightly, burying her face in the child's hair. Her arms shook. Her heart ached. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm here now." The girl nodded, pressing her cheek to her mother's shoulder. Jack watched from the corner, silent, letting them have the moment. The alien mother looked up at him slowly. Something was different in her eyes now. Trust. Maybe not full, but something had changed. "You saved her," she whispered. "And me." Jack nodded. "You don't have to be alone anymore." She looked around the small cabin. It was simple: wood walls, a tiny kitchen, a few shelves, a stone fireplace. But it felt more real, more alive, than anything she'd known in years. The girl reached for both their hands, her mother's and Jack's, and held them together. All three sat in silence. A strange silence. Not empty, but full. That night, the mother didn't sleep on the cold ground. She didn't shiver under the stars. She lay under a real roof, beside her child, listening to the soft sounds of peace. And in her heart, something whispered she was no longer just a stranger. She was home. A new family begins to form. Days passed slowly, but in the cabin something beautiful began to grow. Quietly, gently, like a flower blooming after a long winter. The alien mother, once afraid to even speak, now helped. Stir soup over the fire. Her hands, though still healing, folded blankets, picked berries near the edge of the woods, and sometimes even smiled. Her daughter laughed more now, not the quiet, broken laughs from before, but real ones. Loud, small bursts of joy. She danced barefoot across the wooden floor with a doll Jack carved out of old tree bark. And Jack? He watched it all like a man waking from a long dream. The silence that had once filled his home was now replaced by footsteps, whispers, soft, laughter, and life. One morning, the mother was outside, kneeling in the garden Jack had started. The sun touched her silver hair. Her hands were in the soil. She moved slowly, carefully, like she didn't want to disturb the peace. Jack stood on the porch sipping coffee. "You don't have to work," he said. She didn't look up. "I want to." He smiled. "It's just potatoes." She finally looked at him. Even potatoes deserve care. They both chuckled softly. It wasn't a full conversation, but it was more than silence, more than fear. It was beginning. That evening, the mother sat near the fire while her daughter slept curled against her side. Jack passed her a warm cup of tea. She accepted it without hesitation now. "Why are you alone?" she asked quietly. Jack paused, then sat down across from her. "I lost people," he said, "in a different kind of war." She nodded slowly, understanding without needing details. Silence filled the room again, but it was comfortable this time. She began to open up more each day. He learned her name, Rhea, a word that meant star-born guardian in her language. He told her his name again, and this time, she repeated it back softly. Jack. The way she said it made it sound almost sacred. One night a storm rolled in. Thunder shook the roof. The girl clung to both of them. Jack wrapped them all in one thick blanket sitting close to the fire. Rhea didn't pull away. She let herself lean against him, just a little, and when her daughter finally fell asleep in her lap, she whispered, without looking at him, "She calls you Papa when she dreams." Jack's heart paused for a beat. He didn't reply. He just reached out and gently covered them both with more warmth. The next morning, she woke up before the sun. Jack was asleep in the chair. Her daughter was safe in bed, and for the first time in many years, Rhea didn't feel like she was running anymore. She walked outside, stood beneath the early light, and looked up at the sky. Her people had once cast her out, said she had no place. But here, on this strange planet, in a human's wooden cabin, she felt something she never thought she'd feel again. Home. Later, when she handed Jack a bowl of soup, her hand touched his for a moment too long. He looked at her, not with pity, but with something deeper, and in that moment, she felt her voice tremble as she whispered, almost without meaning to, "If you will have me." He blinked. She didn't finish the sentence. She couldn't, but he didn't need her to. He reached out and took her hand gently in his. Their fingers locked, alien and human. But it felt right, like it had always been waiting. He reached for her hand. The world didn't change in an instant. The stars still moved across the night sky. The wind still whispered through the trees. But inside the little wooden cabin at the edge of the forest, something had changed forever. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple. A hand held in another, human and alien, calloused and soft, strong and shaking. Jack didn't say anything when he took Rhea's hand. He just looked into her eyes, and in that quiet moment, everything was said. You're not alone anymore. You're wanted. You're safe. Rhea blinked slowly, her breath catching in her throat. She hadn't felt warmth like this, not just physical warmth, but soul-deep warmth, in what felt like a lifetime. She had fought so long to survive, to protect, to keep going. Now someone else was reaching back, choosing her. The next few days were different. The little alien girl, full of laughter, began calling him Papa out loud now, eyes bright, voice happy. At first, Jack froze when he heard it, but then he smiled, bent down and answered, "Yeah, kiddo?" Rhea saw it from across the room. Her hand covered her mouth. Her eyes stung, not from sadness, but from something she thought had died inside her. Joy. They began building a life, together. Jack crafted a tiny wooden bed just for the girl, shaped like a starship. She squealed when she saw it. Rhea cooked, meals with spices Jack had never tasted. He called them alien magic, and she rolled her eyes every time, but she smiled. She taught him a few words from her language. He taught her to fix a leaky pipe. Every day brought something new. Not perfect, but real. One afternoon, Jack walked in from chopping wood to find Rhea sweeping the floor and softly humming. Her voice was like wind and silver bells. He paused in the doorway, just listening. She turned and blushed when she saw him staring. "What?" she asked. "You sing," he said, a little amazed. "Only when I forget to be afraid," she whispered. He walked closer. "Then keep forgetting." That night, as they sat together watching the fire, Rhea leaned her head against his shoulder. The little girl was asleep again, curled up on Jack's lap. "I used to believe love was for others," Rhea said softly. Jack didn't reply with words. He placed his hand over hers. That was enough. Spring came. The trees blossomed. Birds returned to the sky. One morning, Jack was planting seeds behind the cabin. The girl was helping, mostly just making a mess, but laughing the whole time. Rhea, stood on the porch watching. The wind brushed her hair back. She stepped down into the grass, walked toward them slowly, and placed her hand on Jack's back. He turned, surprised. Her voice trembled as she said the words out loud for the first time. "Take me too, human." Jack looked at her and nodded. No hesitation, no fear, only truth. Later that evening, a small, quiet ceremony was held beneath the trees. No guests, no fancy clothes, just three souls, bound not by blood, but by choice, a human man, an alien woman, and a child who brought them together. They didn't sign papers. They didn't speak vows. They simply stood in the light of the setting sun, hands held, hearts full, and chose each other. Far above them, the stars began to appear. Once those stars had separated their worlds. Now, they looked like a sky full of blessings. In a galaxy divided by species and silence, one cabin in the woods held a love story strong enough to change everything.